We'll call this meeting to order, the April Park and Recreation Commission meeting. My name is Kelly Rosecrans. I'd like to welcome everybody, including all you the public viewers. Before we call the meeting to order here, we'll just have a quick around the table introduction of commissioners and staff members. Dick, start with you.
I'm Dick Beam.
Mayor Zach Ruin.
Matt Heidman.
Jim Schuchek.
Don DeSorsi and Colin Dickman.
Okay, thank you. And we do have some other city officials here today. Our first order of business is to approve the March 26th commission meeting minutes.
So moved.
Did everybody?
Second.
Second. A motion by Colleen, seconded by the mayor to approve minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, discussion on complete streets recommendation from the City of Wisconsin Rapids 2012-2016 outdoor recreation plan. I believe we have Mr. Laspa here to do that. Dave Laspa, our city engineer.
I think that'd be helpful.
Jim? Go ahead.
I
I'll look at Dave's.
I got it.
Yeah, Dave, if you want to maybe just give an overview from the engineering perspective, and then we can talk about, I can talk a little bit about the community, how it kind of connects with maybe the community vision.
Okay, complete streets is what it says. It's for accommodations for vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians. And what I handed out, the top sheet there is Chapter Trans 75, which is adopted by the Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration, and I just highlighted that little piece in there. Whenever the city uses state or federal funds, we're going to have to comply with the complete streets. So we'll have to make accommodations in our streets for bikes, a bike lane, and pedestrians, or there's a lengthy waiver process in here. So first time we'll be affected by it will probably be when we do East Grand, which is construction in 2019. We'll have to have bike trails. We already have sidewalks on West Grand. The second piece I put in there just for everybody's information is the city does have a policy on sidewalks. Our typical residential street is 36 foot wide. The concept was part-time parking, pedestrians could walk in the street. This is a residential area, low volume, everything. And then as you got higher volumes, there would be a gauge there for if sidewalks were needed. And that's about where we are. About the only sidewalks we put in is when a commercial building or multifamily, when they construct, that we make them put in sidewalks. So we're getting little pieces in the commercial areas and the multifamily. This has only been in effect for probably the last 20 years, so they're a little spotty. Then I added in the Attawagum Trail map. That's the large map. That shows our existing bike trails and the city parks, and it's got one county park in there. So you can see where the bike trails, the access to the different parks. And then also for your information, the next sheet would be a lot easier if we'd be in the first floor conference room than Mondo had. That's where the sidewalks exist in the city right now. So we have the capability of combining all of these. We just didn't get a chance to tonight. And then the last sheet is our official map, which gives you an idea from the cities where sidewalks should be based on the classification of the streets. If you're not familiar with classifications, the highest classification is the principal arterial, which normally carries a state highway. Arterials, First Street in the city, 25th Avenue, and then you drop down to different kinds of collectors, would be like 12th Street, Chestnut, and then you had the local streets. So that's basically where the city is, as far as complete streets, where we are right now.
So Dave, when you talked about the federal regulations related to Trans 75, has the city done anything in the past to formalize, beyond adoption of this, if we accept federal funds, is there anything that's been adopted by the council to ensure that any consideration is given to alternative accommodations, bikes and pedestrians, other than the
Not
sidewalk
really.
piece?
Yeah, the
Okay.
sidewalk is the only, and we've gone round and round with the council, and that's is where we are. Where we are with the sidewalk, I don't think we've talked about it for probably the last 10 or 15 years, or our sidewalk policy.
Okay.
But unlike West Grand, not the piece we did, but the piece out from the expressway to 25th Avenue, that was right at the time when this law, Trans 75, was anticipated. The lanes are wide enough, it just isn't marked yet for bikes. But there is sidewalks included. So that's about where we are right now.
So the comprehensive plan talks about complete streets, and it makes a recommendation that the city adopt some sort of formal policy on complete streets, from what I understood, right? Is that accurate? I've done a little bit of research. The health department has helped me. Christy Router from the health department has been involved with a lot of the walkability and accessibility components of the Get Active component in the past, and La Crosse County has a good example of a potential policy. Now, I know this kind of crosses over beyond maybe Park and Rec's purview, more into maybe the Public Works Committee, but not to say that the Park and Rec Committee couldn't make a recommendation maybe to the Public Works Committee or to the council to consider the adoption of a complete streets policy. So I'll pass this around there. There's 2 sheets, you can actually just pass them around. I just got them separated. And I thought that was something we could take and take it with you and read. It was shared with me a while back, and I didn't include it in the packet that went out to the group, so my apologies on that. But I felt maybe for all of our information, just to understand what's the city approved in the past, and maybe what exists for the city to approve. There's a lot of other examples. I think Wausau has another good example about complete streets and bicycling. Really considering making our streets serve 3 modes of transportation: vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And these policies kind of fall in line with that. And I really think, given the emphasis that's been placed on the community survey around nature and recreation, this to me seems like a logical step that the city could consider to formalize its support, or to respond to what the community has decided the emphasis should be around nature and recreation. So that's, I guess, a comment that I would say that maybe the commission could consider a recommendation to the Public Works Committee in light of the recommendation that came out of the Outdoor Recreation Plan for consideration. The other comment I would make would be, we talked a little bit at our last meeting, I think, about the trail system that exists in the city, the marked trail system. When Dave and I spoke earlier today about some other alternatives to be considered, and so the trail map I'm referring to, and then the second one would be that official map, talks about right-of-way. And I think there's a couple of routes that we may want to consider for some additional, in light of maybe some complete streets legislation, would be to think about recognizing a couple additional routes as trails. Starting on the west side of town, the 25th Avenue corridor, which connects to Gaynor, and which then would subsequently connect up with the trail system that crosses Gaynor.
So you're looking at the first map?
Yeah, the colorful map, yeah. So left side by the Zoom, yeah, good question. Near P15, so 25th Avenue, the text is pretty small and could connect up to West Grand and connect through there. That could be an additional route. 17th Avenue to County Trunk F, since County Trunk F is already recognized as an additional, or as a trail, on the Green Trail. And then moving east, Dave, we talked about, is there anything else in that area? West Grand would be the potential to connect into again, near the mall, and the Blue Trail that connects up by the mall. Baker Street was another one that we talked about. If you want to talk a little bit about Baker, that's a little more complex.
Well, Baker is 36 foot wide, and although parking is allowed on most of Baker, nobody parks on it because it's so busy. We could actually, if the Public Works Committee approves it, we could put no parking on there and mark bike lanes on the whole length of Baker, all the way down through the new roundabout.
And that would then connect to the Purple Trail, which connects into Robinson Park. In a couple of meetings that have been discussed in this body and some others about connectedness to parks, that a lot of our parks are connected with roads, but not a lot of consideration has been given to connect them to trails or paths, as recognized trails. So I think this would be a logical way to connect some of those parks together. Dave, we talked about East Grand would be accomplished through the reconstruction in
Right.
2019. Which other streets?
We talked about First Street, but that's already marked.
That's already marked, yeah. And we at the last meeting connected through Veterans Park, so that's been.
Did you already mention Chestnut?
We talked about Chestnut too. If you want to maybe share that.
Well,
Chestnut.
Chestnut's 40 foot wide, so if we mark bike trails on it, we got to take the parking off. So
Okay.
that by the standards, there isn't enough width there. We have to mark a 6 foot wide path on either side of the road, which wipes out the parking. If it was 48 foot wide, we could do it, but it's only 40 foot wide, and there's little chance of widening it because of the houses being so close.
So maybe one of the things to weigh as we move forward, and the Public Works Committee could probably have the same conversation, is around the emphasis of parking on some of the collector streets and arterial streets, and local streets it makes sense, but maybe it doesn't make as much sense to keep it on things like Baker and some of the other areas.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's embarrassing.
Dave, were there any others? Pepper Ave.
Yeah, well, Pepper would be one that we should complete the sidewalk on. We've done pieces of it. The sidewalk should be completed from Lincoln Street to First Street. And then there's a little piece that we didn't do on the north side of Pepper between 8th and 12th.
See them down there.
And then we get 12th Street comes up all the time. We've had some hearings on it for sidewalk. And then the commercial area of 10th Street from probably Pepper down to Grove, Public Works seems to get a request every 4 or 5 years on sidewalks because, well, it's the main path from ODC to their handicapped apartment buildings, and we've got motorized wheelchairs in the street and challenged people in the street. They should really have a sidewalk. But sidewalks aren't a very, not a lot of people like sidewalks, so if you remember what we went through on Washington Street to get them in, we had a federal grant and we had a school and it was knocked down, drag them out till we could get approval on that. So it just isn't
32nd Street
popular.
was also discussed.
Right, 32nd Street is wide enough where we in the city portion, we could mark combination parking bike lane.
So still allow for the parking and accommodate
Right.
bicycles on it as well. Okay.
What portion of 32nd would be considered our portion?
Peach all the way to up. Well, it's wide enough. It goes through Grand Rapids, but
Well, that's what I'm-
we
that's what
built
I
it
mean,
in combination, probably from Peach to the railroad tracks where we hit Beer and up the old Green Bay and Western tracks. There's a little portion in there we don't have curb, but for the most part, that's the section.
So would we be sharing that cost then with Grand Rapids?
In
Is that-
theory.
The striping.
We did with the construction, so then they worked with the city, so I assume they would work with us on a bike trail.
Does the trail on W go down to 32nd? That does connect there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To the south, so that could complete a loop.
Yeah, we'd have to work with Grand Rapids. They have a rural section in there. I'm not remembering for sure what the cross section is, but they have to have a 6 foot wide paved shoulder for a bike trail, so.
But they've got trail all the way to 48th.
Yeah, on W, yeah, right.
Out to 48.
Yeah, if we did from 32nd from W on up to, well, far as we could go is the tracks, because then we get in, well, we could work with Beer too and get us out to 54. Well, there's sidewalk on 54 in Beer, so that you could connect.
And when the trail system was named, what consideration was given to the other communities? I mean, they don't call it the same trail system, do they? They might use the
I
same-
believe it was our former Director of Public Works named it Attawagum because of, that's one of our names around here.
Right.
About
But in
the
terms of
rapid.
other communities like Buren adopting that trail system?
I don't know if they ever did. I know we worked with Port Edwards and Nakusa to extend the trail, but I don't know if they call it Attawagum or not. Because we go all the way, it'd be the Blue Trail goes all the way to Nakusa.
I'm just looking at some of the other areas that are in the town of Grand Rapids and the village of Port Edwards on the back side of the airport, the west side of the airport, Range Line Golf Course, those areas too that could complete a much broader system. They're just outside the city limits. Maybe if we're engaging in a discussion with the other towns on the other connections, that might be another one to consider. I guess I'm just curious to the commission's thoughts on maybe picking up some additional recognized trails. I don't know if people have seen the markings that have happened on the bridge, West Grand Bridge, but this is one of the shared lane markings that
Yeah,
would
the
be.
Sharrow.
Yeah, the Sharrow, that's the term for it. And if you look at First Street right now is marked for bikes and
And parking,
parking,
yeah.
but there isn't the Sharrow to
Right.
indicate that it's actually a bike lane, so that could be an additional marking that could be marked on the streets to indicate bicycles and pedestrians, where the lanes are marked, right?
Right.
And how wide a lane do you put in
Uh,
for a bike?
6 foot in a city cross section, because it's actually a 4-foot trail and 2 foot of gutter pan, so it's the minimum is 6 foot wide. And then if there's combination parking and bike trail, it's 13 feet from the face of curb to the white, solid white line.
I'm just thinking of Town Line where they just repaved it and put it in lane on either side. I bet you it's 3 feet on either side as opposed to just a 6 foot.
Right, I was
awfully
just going
narrow.
through the DOT specs, so
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody follows them like the
Right.
city does.
Yeah. And that goes all the way out to Buena Vista
Yeah.
Grasslands. I mean, that's scary biking.
Right.
Cars are going awfully fast out there.
Did they put curb all along that too, yeah?
No.
There's
No,
curb.
there's just a shoulder
It's just-
and then a narrow little bike, which is better than it used to be.
Yes, rough. The other thought would be maybe to recommend action on the commission tonight would be to pursue a cost estimate for striping some of these additional areas. And that would be another piece, right, Jim, in terms of, since it's not in your striping budget today, it would have to come out of somewhere if there's additional striping involved. Striping or painting or marking, what you call it.
You're talking striping stuff that's not currently striped, it should be. right?
Should be striped, or even the new stuff if we were gonna pick up the additional routes, just to get a comprehensive list generated of where the, map, proposed trail route map, like, kinda like we did with Veterans Park and
So
some of
you
the
have a
other
multi-year
chunks.
plan.
Yeah.
So you'd be looking for a recommendation then for these new trails we identified, like 25th and 17th? Because, I mean, the rest of them, obviously, is that what you're?
I think, yeah, to formally recognize them as proposed
Proposed
trails,
trails.
and then we can bring them back
Okay.
to the commission, just maybe for a formal approval. I just wanted to know, before we went too far along, that the commission felt the commission was supportive of that
Mhm.
consideration before city staff went and did any more research on the subject.
The 25th was striped for bike lanes at one time.
Yeah, I was trying to remember, is that up for chip seal?
It's been chip sealed, so it's possible it
Oh,
needs to
then,
be restriped.
yeah, then we would have restriped it in the new system with the bike trail.
I'll check that. I can't remember if the stripes show anymore or not, but at one time we did paint that for bike trail.
Yeah, that we don't have any signage, it's just marked in the way you do a bike trail on intersections with the dash line.
What is it on 25th? That's wide enough to accommodate parking and the trail?
Yeah, it's 48-foot wide street, so we're okay with
So you have parking on both sides plus
plus the
bike
bike.
trail?
Yeah.
Does the bike trail, or the bike markings, does that account for like traffic calming? When they talk about the improvements that can be put on a corridor
Yeah,
for traffic calming?
that's what I understand is when you narrow the lanes, or instead of having a big wide lane, you have a lot of markings. The driver doesn't feel as safe as he does with a big wide asphalt pavement, and it does tend to calm traffic or slow traffic down.
I get a lot of calls about 25th Avenue being kind of a raceway, which it is. If you drive it, you don't realize it's only 25 miles an hour, and I think I need additional calming mechanism maybe assist that. Not to say we want to change another speed limit. I think that could be another solution to not having to do that.
Yeah, 25th is one that is one where we could take a look at. 25 based on, like First Street's 30. It just was 25, always 25, when it got rebuilt, it stayed at 25.
Just be careful what you wish for.
So do these-
Yeah, I
do these
got enough
current-
problems.
Do these current trails have signage aside from the lane that's striped? Because
No. There were some old signs that just said Attawagum Trail, and I think they're falling down now.
Yeah, it was very similar to
Some are still up, but
this.
they're getting rough.
Yeah.
And we talked about the trail signing as our maybe a next step, and we thought maybe before we go there, it would
Let's
make
get everything
sense to
striped first.
pick up whatever else is out there.
Get the trails first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of where the county's approaching it too with that bike
Bike
map
map,
app
yeah.
is to decide what other trails don't we have on our maps today.
Like 25th Avenue, could there be a way that could be tied in with the Gaynor Avenue, the big bike trail there, the blue one? I mean, 25th comes up, and would that just, obviously it dead ends on Gaynor, or it can continue all the way back to the West Junior High, and then.
Yeah.
Is there-
I don't think we'd get a railroad crossing.
Yeah,
That's the
no,
problem.
no.
We'd have to probably turn it on Gaynor.
On Gaynor?
and Connect into
and
the.
connect into that then?
Yeah.
Gaynor's been widened.
And yeah, Gaynor's 44 feet, so, let me look at my chart here, 44 feet. With 44 feet, you can have parking on one side and a bike lane on the other.
So you're just thinking 17th and 25th?
From 17th.
Well, I'm
Well-
just thinking if you do 25th, you go around Engel and then up to F.
That's connected. 17th is already, 17th is connected to the bike trail already.
Well,
Are you
I thought
saying-
the mayor was talking going from here
That's
up
25th.
up to there.
Mhm.
That's 17th.
Are you saying all the bike lanes on the road have to be 6 feet?
If they're painted on the road, bikes can travel, they're considered a vehicle, they can travel on any street, it's just if you want to designate a bike lane.
But I've seen them, where they're just about
They
4
seem
feet.
narrower than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We
they-
usually-
but they're-
I'm going by the Department of Transportation's recommended, there's no law, it's just, we always follow the.
State,
The state DOT's
okay.
specifications.
Because, we're in a busy place in Florida, and then they got bike trails that are about 4 feet wide, that's about all. They got the stripe, and they got it marked as bike trail.
Yeah, there's varying specs, but this is we use Wisconsin's.
Okay.
Used to have to stay inside the gutters.
Which is about, what, a foot?
Yeah.
I hope they don't
But I
cover
think
one of
there's some
those drains.
consideration that in some of these streets where we just don't have the width, if we
Yeah.
want to designate something, maybe it makes sense to.
Especially if you're going from a trail to,
And Gaynor, for example.
Right, that's where this symbol will come in. You put the
Yeah.
Sharrow on the road that says, this is a bike trail shared with, that's what it's supposed to mean, bike
Yeah.
trail shared with cars. There isn't really a marked trail.
and it doesn't have to be 6 feet?
No, that just tells the biker, hey, here's a bike trail,
Okay.
but you gotta share the road with cars.
Yeah.
That's what that symbol's.
And is there a white stripe along the side of the road to show where the bike can go?
You don't have to with that symbol.
Okay.
This symbol's used on narrow streets where you don't have enough width for a bike
Specific line.
Right, and when you have a bike trail, then you just put the bike on there, you don't put the corporal stripes over it.
So then, this commission then could, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there because I would feel that 25th Avenue, that should be then tied into the bike trail. So then we can, if everybody would agree, we could suggest to the Public Works that you 25th
What's
to
the
Gaynor
process? Yeah, I was just gonna ask that, what's the were the final say, were we the final say in the last bike trail? I guess it wasn't on the street.
If it's on the street, we always go to the top of the ramp.
So just bring it to public, so make a recommendation to Public Works then, okay. So then I think we could, once we get it on a proposed map, then the commission would approve it, send it to Public Works for a referral, and then go to the council for a full, final approval. Yeah.
So essentially a motion to have, who's going to?
City staff.
To have city staff,
Yeah.
develop
back
a
with a
proposal
proposal.
for future bike lanes, or
Sure.
Mhm. Consideration for bike lanes, yeah.
I would make that a proposal.
Okay,
Did you get what that was?
this motion would be for the commission to recommend that city staff comes up with a proposed additional bike routes.
Mhm.
With cost estimates or just a determination of potential
Striping.
routes?
I think striping.
I think
Striping
include the
estimate if you have
striping
time-
estimate,
If you have
yeah.
time to do that.
Nothing but time.
I bet.
It's whatever you don't do now. Because,
Yep.
yeah. I'd second that.
Do you have that, Ron? Okay, a proposal or a motion was made by Colleen and seconded by Mayor Verwink that this commission recommends to the Public Works Committee recommend coming up with a proposal for future bike paths within the city of Wisconsin Rapids and cost estimates.
Does the commission want to see that before it goes to Public Works?
That's what I was gonna bring up if I could. If staff comes up with whatever and maybe bring it back to the commission first, and then what, if you agree or what you do
Then go
agree
to
to,
Public
send to the
Works.
Public Works.
Okay,
I think that we would prefer that.
that works. And then we can walk through any pros and cons that were found out from the city staff.
So maybe just leave that. Remember the cost estimate if it's tweaking
The 17th Avenue quarter,
that little section. Because you could connect this.
you didn't like that, did you?
Well, I don't care. I think it would slow traffic in front of Mead School.
Mead
So
School.
that would be a good problem.
Colleen had a good point there about that stretch of 17th, and if you would come from F down to Ingle Road, then that would be the designated bike path, and then over to 25th Avenue, and then down to Gaynor, and then we'd swing east on Gaynor and tie back in with the Port Edwards
I'm
Rapids.
just saying you wouldn't have to do both, but
I mean, that's just,
I think that, I would agree with
Folks.
that. You know, the other thing I would mention, where maybe this kind of came as a result of too, I know we've got a motion on the table, but is connectedness to the parks. And if we're gonna connect
Right.
our parks with roads, and now we're thinking of how we're not connected with trails, the next piece is if you have parking lots and parking spaces, do you have bike racks? And a lot of them, and city design engineer was just mentioning that today, he was at Lions Park with his kids, and one, there were no bike racks. So if you're connecting them with bike trails, you'd want to have a bike rack to park your bike. Secondly, was the issue of people either in a stroller or in a wheelchair, that a lot of the facilities are not connected with a small path. So you had to push the stroller through the mud to get to the shelter or get to the playground equipment or whatever it might be. So I think that's just a next level of this, kind of where the conversation evolved from the trails, that's something we'd want to consider. What's missing to be ADA compliant, or even just for safety and ease of use of the parks, that there's some connectedness missing, not just in Lions, there's probably others in other areas too.
well, then there would be reason to leave it on 17th to connect it to Mead, the Mead fields.
Good, thank you, Mayor, that makes sense. Okay, the motion on the floor by Quinn, seconded by Mayor Verwey, for the Public Works, as we mentioned, come up with a proposed bike trail plans and cost estimates. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, good. Thank you, Dave, very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Dave.
Let's see, move on here. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, clarification of policy for park reservation fee waivers. I know this probably hasn't been discussed for about 5 years.
Since 2008.
Since 2008.
Right, and I actually forgot to bring a copy of the minutes from 2008.
Okay.
Did you send it by yours, though?
I did email them, yep. Just want some clarification from the commission on that, because we get people once in a while who come in that have had a free rental because it was done in the past. And it's for, nonprofits. It's not often, but it's also not consistent between groups. Because there was a church last summer, I know, that said, well, we've gotten it free in the past, which was fine. It was, I think it was during the week. But then another church came in and said, well, we'd like to rent the shelter for whatever, and they actually paid for the rental. So I don't know whether we offer it up and say, well, it's free for nonprofits, or if we have a rate for nonprofits, or if we just don't do anything different.
So back in 2008, Mr. Shuchek suggested that have 501c3 rating use for city park facilities as long as it wasn't a fundraising event.
That is one of the issues that has come up.
Yes.
I know Sue had some concerns with that. Some of the groups might have been nonprofit, but they were using the facility as in conjunction with a fundraiser or some other type of money, profiting
And I think
event.
the majority of them are, a picnic, like the Boy Scout groups
Right.
or, that kind of thing, but
And the other issue we had was on weekends, if they would ask for it on a weekend, should the nonprofit that's paying no fee take precedent over somebody that's actually paying a fee for the weekend? And
Good point.
I did get some information from what a couple of other communities are doing. Unfortunately, they lost all their information for email addresses, so this didn't get out as early as I had hoped. But we still got some response from a few people, so.
And I would suggest too that given the number and variety of nonprofits that have been given, status has been given by the IRS, it's almost anybody and everybody that has, are these just copies of the same thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, those are all the same.
That anybody that really truly wants a nonprofit can almost get that status from the IRS.
Yep. And I don't know that a lot of people even know that we've given free rentals. It's just kind of been a past practice thing. So I just want clarification for this season when things come up.
Well, the rental fees are so reasonable.
I was just gonna say, isn't it?
And like Matt said, if it's during the week, it's not that much of an issue.
no, it really comes into play on the weekends, when you have multiple people that would like to rent a facility that are gonna pay versus giving it to a nonprofit.
Well, you could do you could set up a fee schedule if you wanted to, outside of what you already have and do one for profit and, for profit and nonprofit. I mean, it gets a little messy, but you can do it pretty cleanly, or, in county, out of county, something along those lines if you wanted to do something like that.
How much are we charging now, Matt? More or less?
It depends on the facility.
Yeah.
150 for Helen's house, otherwise 80
How much?
for the, 150,
Yeah.
otherwise 80 for the others,
And that's for a day.
Mhm.
for a full day. We don't do the partial day rentals.
Robbie's.
80.
Really?
More with the kitchen? Like Sandlot and Helen's
Sandlot's
house?
80, but Helen's
With or
house is
without?
150.
And we streamlined that up last year or 2 years ago, and that helped tremendously.
I think that might have been 2 years ago.
And it did not have any effect on on our rentals either, as far as numbers
Right.
went, so.
I think, Don, as you mentioned to me, they're pretty well booked throughout summer, right?
Mhm.
Particularly the Helen Zoo House and others.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, it's just a suggestion. I mean, you know, to do it's $80 if you're for profit, you know, if you have a nonprofit status, it's,
The only problem with that would be if you'd get those requests both at the same time for a weekend, which one do you pick?
that's when they go in a hat.
Well,
Well, I'm not saying you don't charge the nonprofit, I'm just saying you charge it a bit less.
Right,
Perhaps.
right.
And then do it.
But almost
Not
every,
advertise that, but, you know.
most organizations are a nonprofit today.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Anybody that wants it can
You
get
know, I
it.
mean,
And then you gotta go the next step and figure out what are they doing at this event? Because like I said, I know Sue has a problem with if it's a for-profit
Right, or a fundraiser too.
or fundraiser type event. And
How often does it come up?
I
Yeah.
would say just based on last summer, maybe 5 times. So it's not, I mean, it's not something that's really often,
I think it's growing a little bit because now everybody's, people talk, people are in different organizations and,
Well, and funds are tight everywhere.
right, so everybody's looking
Sure.
for a different alternative.
I think in the absence of other alternative fee structure, it seems like it's kind of across the board. I mean, even the county doesn't waive or discount their fees for shelters, and I think that's almost the right thing to do out of fairness, so you're not having to pick winners and losers. But I think the other thing would be maybe a consideration to a discount to nonprofits if you wanted to discount a rental to the point that Colin raised up to me makes sense.
Providing they're not using it to raise funds.
Right, right.
That's one solution, give it to them at a lesser cost, providing they're not using it to raise funds.
2 of them that I can think of that, I think they're both Boy Scout groups, they've come in, and it's just for an end of the year picnic or something, and it's just a couple of hours at Sandlot Park. And I know that they wouldn't pay the $80, but do you just say, well, if it's open, you just use it, or, I mean, they can, it's an open
Right,
shelter,
yeah.
so. I don't remember if they used the kitchen, I think they did. So,
Then they had to have the key,
mhm,
then it becomes a rental.
mhm.
Oh, sure. That makes sense. If they can't get in, they have to pay. I'd make a motion to not discount, in the absence of a policy or an actual discount, if it's 25%, or I think we should consider some sort of across-the-board discount for, fee structure for nonprofits. And in the interim, there wouldn't be a discount or a fee waiver granted without a policy. Does that make any, complete that thought?
So in other words, we'll charge a fee to everybody.
Until
And
another.
Until another policy is in place that may provide a discount of sorts.
So we're, oh, okay.
And then I think a policy could, or a recommendation could come back from park staff to recommend a discount of something for nonprofits, or even if you want to go to the true fee schedule for the different facilities. Almost like a percentage is a little bit easier to.
And maybe if we do, then maybe we'll, before we bring it back to the commission, we touch base with Sue on the language.
Yeah, I
and,
was just gonna say, I know
yeah.
Sue wanted to talk
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, I see some of the communities have a worthy event. I mean,
Mhm.
Well, that's.
How do you
That's
tell them?
fabulous at
Yeah,
best,
I mean,
isn't it?
who wants to
you wanna
be
stay away from that.
Matt's
right?
worthiness
Besides
and
that.
Don's two different things.
Like those
Just talk to Matt, don't talk to Don, you know? It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
jeez.
5 people that applied next year might be 10 this year and
Mhm.
15 the next, so that's gonna.
If you leave it a little up to the commission, because it's one thing if it's Boy Scouts, but then if it's an adult group, it's a different thing. You know, I mean, it's for a youth program or something, it's one thing, but if it's for an adult group,
Yeah, right.
why should they get a discount?
say Corvettes of the North wants Robinson Park.
Yeah,
They rarely do anything that isn't a fundraiser.
right.
Some, you know, when they get together, there's some fundraising going on most of the time. So they rent Robinson Park Shelter, and you give it to them for 50% of what John Q. Public would pay to have his family picnic there. I think the lines would be cleaner if you had no discount myself.
And the county doesn't. I mean, if the county offered some sort of discount and there was a reason for us to be consistent, they don't offer a discount.
If you read Hartford's explanation, it sounds well and good until you get to the end, and then they start talking about worthy, and it's so subjective and so judgmental that, I mean, I don't think you should go there.
Yeah, define worthy.
But you could certainly include something that indicates, you know, that somewhere there's an out if whoever makes that decision about the fees, that, you know, depending on, there may be, for example, the Boy Scouts come in and it gives the ability for somebody to waive the fee. I mean, there's an out if.
And that's why the language would be helpful.
I think I would, if I draw a line anywhere, it'd be where, if it's for a youth program for like Boy Scouts or something like that, or Girl Guides or something, as opposed to an adult group, the adult group doesn't get a discount, and if he wants to get the, you know.
Well, that's the problem though, is it's gotta, the language has to be something where if Dawn is there, or if Mary is there, or if whoever's there, because sometimes we have, in fact, quite often, we have other departments covering our office now. We're sharing people as far as on the second floor. It's gotta be something everybody's gonna interpret the same.
Well, if it's a youth program, it could be left at the discretion of the staff.
Under 18, right?
Yeah.
What is the definition of youth? Under 18?
Oh, if somebody might say yes and
Somebody might say
might say
no.
no.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
I hear what you're
people want to
saying,
play
Jim.
games with something like that, that's one thing, but, you know.
You know, we need something so that staff is comfortable making that decision when they're coming to the, you know, into the office, and Peggy is there, or Dawn is there, or Mary is there. You know, the potential for up to 4 different people, 5, being there servicing the customer. They all have to be on the same page, and that was kind of my discussion on that.
I think in the interim, in the absence of a
Easiest is to
policy,
just
it's
have a
no
fee.
no fee waiver or discount. And then to come back to the commission though with the recommendation of how to address, and I would agree with Jim, in the youth piece, that we probably want to account for those.
And that would be determined by whatever the policy structure would be.
And provided it's not a fundraiser. If it's a fundraiser, they gotta pay their discount.
So the motion is, there's no fee waiver until a policy is adopted by the.
Right.
Okay, yeah, okay. Motion is on the floor.
I'll second.
Second by Colleen. All in favor, signify.
Aye.
Oh, noes? Aye. Noes? Ayes have it. All right, thank you. Item number 5, appoint a Park and Recreation Commission member to the Planning Commission. Presently, I'm that member, so
Would you like to continue?
I can do that.
I'd make that motion.
So moved, second.
Motion by Mayor Verwing, seconded by Jim Suchek, that Kelly Rosecrans remains a Plan Commission member. All in favor, signify by
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Bills.
I would make a motion.
I think Colleen glanced at them.
Well, I glanced at this.
Jim.
I'd
Thanks,
make a
Jim.
motion to approve those.
A motion by Colleen to approve the bills.
The April bills.
For the
Some
month of
March, I
April.
guess.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Dick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
See,
Okay, we'll move along to staff reports. Matt?
We had some good news. Whitterfield finally unthawed, and we had no damage. The water main was not broke, so that was good news. That facility is up and running. The skate park is up and running. Water also thawed out at Robbie with no damage to the water main. We plan on opening Those parks, soon, we're installing water meters right now. We have a few small issues we need to get taken care of, but my hope is that we'll be fully functional next week and all bathrooms will be open in all facilities. We had a little storm cleanup this week with the wind and the rain. We lost 2 trees in Ben Hansen Park. We lost one at Sandlot, and then we had a couple in private properties that went down that we had to do some work on. We just concluded another city auction. We auctioned off 13 items. A squad car, old wastewater treatment truck, some piping, some of the stuff as part of our Lean 6 project with the stockroom, the reduction in inventory. Some of those items were on this auction and we'll have more to come. And they have been successful and we are getting what I think is a fair amount of money for the items. We are complete in our office with both of our monitors now. They're both up and running and scrolling and providing information. And we've kind of cleaned up the outside area and installed a bulletin board and information that's very easy for the public to find and go through. So if you haven't been by, stop up by our office and see the improvements that have been made up there. I had a discussion with Bertram Druneman about fracking the well at Mead Field so we can get away from using city water on the watering of the baseball fields and softball fields. And I've got the estimate back, and the estimate's $3,900. And Jim is pretty confident that we can get enough output out of that well to do that. And I think it's well worth the I don't want to say chance, but because I would say the chances are better than 50% that this will be successful. But obviously, when you're talking wells and something in the ground, there's no guarantee. But I think it's well worth $3,900 to explore that. If this is successful, the payback is going to be in a matter of a couple of years. The payback will be there. And it'll be, we had talked originally about sinking a different well in a different location, but we're going to frack the existing well that was installed and turned out to be a low producer. So I'd like to go ahead with that project. And then, of course, if it's successful, we'll get everybody hooked up, and hopefully by next year we'll see a substantial decrease in water costs at Mead Field. So
Is there discoloration?
there's going to be some rust in that water, but with some careful placement of the sprinklers, as long as you keep it off the buildings and keep your patterns away from the signage in the buildings, we should be fine. So actually you have the same at Whitterfield. That's well water as well, and they've done some, we've done quite a bit of work up there and getting everything in correctly now, and we're not seeing too much as far as staying in areas that are unsightly or so.
Good.
I think we'll be going ahead with that. Also got an estimate on a dewatering well at the pool. That's coming up shortly. With the situation we had last year and with high groundwater levels this spring, I think it would be almost a guarantee if we don't put a dewatering well in there, we're going to lose it. The water level's high enough now, and with it already raised, it's going to be very susceptible when I start draining water out of that pool. So we're going to go ahead and get some dewatering wells installed near the deep end and dewater for a couple weeks before we start lowering the water level in the pool itself to try to save what we've got. So we're going to go ahead with that. And then we've been working on some options for some security cameras up in the Robinson Park area. We've talked to some security people. We've got 3-4 different options out there. They've met with Jason, our IT person, as far as what method we can use as far as antennas to get the live pictures back to either PD or to offices here. And we're coming up with some options there, and we should have some pricing on that shortly. In the meantime, I've asked PD to put temporary cameras up there because next week we will be doing some sandblasting of the building that had the graffiti damage done late last fall. And I don't want to have to do that and turn around the next day and start over again. So we've got temp cameras up there and we're working on that. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Those wells you're putting in the pool, you're putting them right?
They're gonna be just
perimeter?
outside the fence
Yeah.
on the perimeter next to the edge of the concrete. And we're probably looking at 3 dewatering wells tied together with submersibles. If we stay below 75 gallons per minute discharge, we do not need a permit from the DNR. We can discharge right in the parking lot. If we exceed 75 gallons a minute, then you have to go and get a discharge permit.
When are you gonna do all that dewatering?
We're gonna have to start
Stops raining?
pretty soon. I'll have to start drawing that down for repair probably by the end of this month. So I'm gonna anticipate within 2 to 3 weeks, we're gonna have to start the dewatering process.
Could we use that water somewhere
Yes,
to
right,
water
right
the
in the field,
fields?
right
down?
in the store. That's what I was getting at. I was gonna go there, but no.
Just attach a little sprinkler.
If you put them deep enough, there'll be an inexhaustible supply down there.
That's why we can't go that deep. We're only gonna be going up probably 1.5 feet deeper than
Then the well, the sump.
Than the sump,
Mhm.
correct. So we'll probably be at the 12-foot level, and even then, I don't know if we'll, you know, if we're gonna be able to pull enough water to get the groundwater level down. I would hope so, and stay below that discharge rate, so.
That's probably sitting right on rock, so you keep it, you know.
Mhm.
That's-
Mhm.
Thank you, Matt.
Kelly, can I
Yes,
just
Jim.
take a minute? You probably all know by now that we're gonna have a junior hockey team here next winter. We've successfully, completed, they're gonna be called the Wisconsin Rapids River Kings. They're gonna have a musky fish and crown for the logo and green and blue for their colors. It's gonna be, they'll have 9 weekend home tournaments. They play Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The teams come in here for the weekend, so we'll have 27 home games, and which will bring a little bit of thing into the community. It's coming at a very good time for us because the men's hockey has fallen off to almost to nothing for rental. The Hockey Association is running at about half the number of people they had before because of the economy and what it's costing to run. We're building a new locker room which will eat up the first year's rentals, but after that it'll be roughly $30,000 in our pocket to subsidize the other programs that we have and keep us operating without costing the city taxpayers any money, which it hasn't up until this date. So we're pretty anxious to see how this is going to go, and it took a lot of work. There was a lot of, you might have heard the bad publicity at Stevens Point, but it was a little bit of a misunderstanding because the one group had left and this other group took over, and they had a payment plan that they were paying off the previous debt and everything else. And of course, long story short, when they found out, Stevens Point found out they're moving, they said, well, you gotta pay it all tomorrow. So they've already advanced us half the cost of building the locker room, and we will collect money as they start, operating in September. So we're pretty happy that this is gonna come, and it's gonna be good for the community too. They bring kids from all over the country, and believe it or not, these kids are from 16 to 20, and none of them are probably going to make it to the professionals. They're playing maybe for scholarships or something like that, and they pay around $6,000-7,000. The kids pay to come and play, so it's there's things.
Some serious scandal.
So that's it. If anybody has any questions, I might be able to answer, but as I say, we're very happy to have this coming to the community.
Is that gonna change your schedule out there at all, Jim, as far as your open times or any of that kind of thing, or?
No, we did the same thing here. When they approached us, the first thing we did was meet with the hockey and the figure skating, the same as when the baseball was coming here. You meet with the other groups,
Sure.
and it turns out that when we looked at the schedule, the weekend that they played last year wouldn't have interfered with the high school at all, you know, and the figure skating. And again, they're anxious to have them come because we only charge as much as we need to pay the expenses. And of course, the expenses are going up because we got a facility that's almost 25 years old, so you know what that is.
Yep.
And the other thing is, we are looking very hard because we got extra time to have more open skating. Last year we took in $7,000 on open skating. We've been fortunate that Domtar has given us grants, and we bought skates. We've got a lot of skates there. We've had programs where we get the kids from school. You know, I think he had 168 here not too long ago. We open it up during the day if the kids want to bring, you know, come to skate. They can skate for nothing, you know. And what we're trying to do is get kids into skating, and we have the rental skates there to do it. So we're going to probably have more open skating now because of the drop off in the youth hockey program. So you have to adapt with the times. They change. Yeah, so.
When do they start their season, Jim? When do they start playing?
They start practicing in September and they start playing in October. Last year, they I got it here somewhere. Last year they started at the end of September. They played September, the last weekend of September, the middle weekend in October, the third weekend in November, first week in December, in middle of January, end of January, and then in February they're finished. And then of course you get into the playoffs, which.
And those would take up like a weekend. That'd be like they'd have like a homestand of 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah,
okay.
It'd be Friday night, probably Saturday afternoon or evening, and Sunday afternoon or evening. It doesn't really affect.
Well, good. Well, thank you for that presentation.
And I know they've been able to, they're working through a beer sale.
Well,
yeah. I know I was hit up for that a little bit about it. I said,
well, that was a little premature that they hit you up because we've been talking it at the board meeting, and you know, and we will, you know, our first step, if we're going to do it, our first step is to meet with the Board of Education.
Right.
You know, and you know, we've had as you know, a good relationship with the Board of Education over the years from when we started. You know, I mean, we built the football field and they use the football field, and you're talking about a well. They got a well there. We don't use city water for watering that football field. They got a well we put in there. So it's you know, we don't anticipate, but it depends on what the regulations are and everything else. The other thing is as the building, you know, gets other uses. We had the curling here for a week in March, and one of the real things that they missed was that we couldn't have beer there. You know, I mean, and that really went over well. It didn't go good for us because we didn't make any money on it. We didn't charge them enough, but it's like everything else. You do something the first time, you find out what the cost is, and if they ever wanted to come back, and they were very happy with how it turned out for that curling. You know.
It was an amazing thing, a sight to see curling in that facility.
Yeah, well, that's what those rinks can be used for, and there could be, you know, in the future other functions that there if you had the ability to sell beer. So we're going to look into it, but it's not a thing that the junior hockey wasn't going to come here unless they have it. You know, I mean, that's a separate issue, and we'll treat it as a separate issue. You know, so.
Okay. Thanks again. Okay, I guess, and then Mary had her report, and everybody could have read that. So I guess that moves us to adjournment.
Someone?
Yeah.
Colleen? Second? Jim?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it.